Join me on this week's Xamarin Show together with Brandon, who is going to talk about all the async and commands and awaits and all the things this you're not going to want to miss. Tune in. Welcome back, everybody, to the Xamarin Show, Xamarin Community Toolkit Edition. I'm your host, Gerald, and more importantly, my guest of today will be Brandon Minnick. Brandon, hey, how are you doing?
Hey, everybody. Hey, Gerald. Good to see you again.
Good to see you too. So we're going to talk about all things Async Command, and we're going to talk a little bit about that in a minute. But Brandon, for the people who don't know you, what do you do? Who are you?
Yeah. So I work at Microsoft as a developer advocate, focusing primarily on .NET, Xamarin, Azure. I'm a big fan of Xamarin. I used to work at Xamarin back in the day, and also a big fan of async and await. I went down a rabbit hole, I guess you could say, a couple years ago, where I put together a bunch of async await best practices, and those we ended up bringing into the toolkit. So I wanted to show those off and show how everybody can take advantage of these cool new features.
Awesome. Yeah, I don't even know why, but I went Googling your name today, and actually one of the suggestions that comes up is Brandon Minnick, async await best practices or something. So,
Nice.
He has done a lot of this stuff. And there is a GitHub repository, which is, the link is down here below, and even a little bit more below for you to click on it so you don't have to type it. And there is a lot of stuff with sessions, all kinds of background information. You've been really thorough with all of that stuff.
That's right. Yeah, there's videos, there's conference talks I've given. I've gone on the on.NET show here at Microsoft and talked about async await. So, why not talk about async await on the Xamarin show?
Exactly, because that's been really cool with all the love and the things that you do for Xamarin. You still do a lot, and now you're also really involved with the Xamarin Community Toolkit. So I'm here on stream. Thank you for that, because I really appreciate it that you're helping us out. And one of the things that you've added is the thing that we're going to talk about here, and that is the async command thing. So tell us about the background. I know commands from Xamarin.forms, but they need to be async. What's going on there? What is this?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what. Let's we'll jump into some code here, because I've got a sample app that I put together just for us, just for today, and this is all open source, so don't worry about having to memorize anything. But just to give you a little preview of this app, it just pulls down the latest release of the Xamarin Community Toolkit. So we've got a little Get Latest Version button here. When I click this, that'll trigger a command in the view model that gets the latest release. And so let's see if I click it. Looks like we're on 1.0.2, at least as of today. Good. So the app's working. And yeah, if we check out the code here, right now we don't have any Xamarin Community Toolkit code in yet. That's what we're going to add together today. But right now it should feel pretty familiar. So here in the code, we have a command that executes when we click the button. This is just the Xamarin.forms command. We haven't implemented any Xamarin Community Toolkit stuff yet. We're going to do that together soon. But this code should look and feel pretty familiar. We have a command that's called get latest release, and this runs this method execute get latest release, and all that's going on here is we are calling the GitHub API for the Xamarin Community Toolkit, specifically its releases, pulling back that as JSON, deserializing that, and then I just grab the first one, which is the newest one, and I grab its tag name. So that's how we can display on the screen here that the latest version is 1.0.2. So nothing wrong with this. If your app looks like this today, you're doing everything right, way to go, but we can make it better. And so one of the things we can do is with Xamarin Community Toolkit, we can change this from command to async command. And so we'll bring in the namespace here, and with async command, we get a lot more goodies. Specifically, if you haven't guessed already by the name, async command wants a method that returns a task. It wants an async await method is one way to think of it. And along with that, kind of like with the Xamarin.forms command, you can also pass in your can execute, but we also get a couple more goodies in here, like on exception, you can actually handle your try catch block right here. So if you want to catch an exception, like maybe you're going to look for a timeout exception, HTTP response exception, anything like that, you can actually pass that in here that we don't have to have try catch blocks clogging up your method code. Continue on captured context. We won't go too deep into this. I would say refer back to the async await best practices repo to understand what configure await means. But basically, when a task completes, it tries to return to the thread that called it. So typically tasks will run on a different thread, a background thread. And if you don't say otherwise, it'll just return to the task that called it. But if you can say configure await false, which we do by default on async command, then it won't. And so we get a little performance bump there. So we don't have to have an unnecessary context switch. Plus commands are usually kicked off on the main thread. So we don't ever want to return to the main thread if we don't have to. So we get a little performance boost for free because this is continue on captured context by false by default. But one of my favorite goodies is actually this allows multiple executions. It's true by default, but let me add that in right here. So one of the things I'm going to do is we don't actually need async await here anymore. If you're using the Xamarin Forms command, you do need to have async await here in your command initialization. But for async command, we can actually just pass in the method. It's going to handle async await, all those best practices. It's going to do that all for us. And so what I'm going to do here is instead of defaulting to allow multiple executions to be true, I'm going to say false. And what this does, it gives us a lot of code for free. Gerald, how many times in your app have you had a Boolean called isBusy, and then when you kick off a task, you say isBusy is true, and then you have a try catch finally, you say isBusy is false.
Yes,
all the time.
I have had a lot of those, and you can combine it. This is a nice bridge. We didn't prepare this for the state layout. So if you still want to do that, we also have a video about the state layout. Go check it out. But sorry, Brandon, go ahead. I've had lots of those. Tell me how to get rid of them, please.
So yeah, with allows multiple executions, it's perfect for this example because we have this button that's going to call an API, and we don't want the user to just mash the button because that happens all the time in our apps. Like maybe we have a slow internet connection. The user's like, is anything happening? And they keep tapping the button, and that's just slowing everything down because now it's making more and more internet requests. So just by saying, let's bring this up full screen again. Boop. So just by saying multiple executions is false, when I click this button, you'll actually see it be disabled until it's done executing. And so let's go ahead and tap this again. We'll keep an eye on it. Hopefully it's not too quick. I'm going to let go now. There it goes. So just for a second there, you saw it grayed out because this command will only execute one at a time. So lots of nice goodies. Like I said, with Async Command, you get the async await best practices for free so that returning to the captured context, it's going to be false by default. There should really never be a reason anybody sets that to true. If you find a reason and you're watching the show, let me know because I'm curious. But I did want to have that as an option in case maybe someone needed it. But so we can just pass in our task. So this is just calling the method. You could do it like this. You don't need to do async await, but you could also pass it in as a method group, which I kind of like. It looks kind of clean, kind of cool. We get allows multiple executions. We get the on exception handling. So we could pass in something like on exception, and we could say if an exception happens, console.write line or something like that, right? And so then we could come down here and remove our try catch block. So all sorts of really cool goodies. And there's one that I also really like that might not be the most popular, but it should be. And what do I mean by that? Well, testing. How do you unit test your commands? So I have a unit test project in here, and I I do have this set up. Actually, this is the final code, so it's going to give me some red squiggles. But for example, if I say Xamarin Community Toolkit dot get releases, which is our command, I can invoke it. I can do things with it, but I can't await it. So I never know when it's finished. And this was something that was always really hard for me anytime I wanted to write unit tests for my view models, because I'm like, I don't know when the command's done, and I got to guess or like set up events. But with Async Command, we can change this command from iCommand to AsyncCommand. And then here in our unit tests, we can take advantage of this method called execute async. So this one right here. And so now this unit test can actually initialize my view model. I can make sure that the latest release is null by default. And then I can execute the command. I know when it's done because I'm awaiting it. Once it is done, I can check the latest release, and I can make sure that, the first one was null and the second one was not null, and then all my code's working. So huge fan of Async Command and Async Command as well.
This is awesome. You get a nicer syntax, if you ask me, like with the method group, with the because the whole allow multiple executions that relies under the hood on can execute and those kinds of things, because you had to do all these things with your is busy. So this is really cool. And of course async, which is something that we should all use and love for all the reasons that are in your best practices. So that is really cool.
Yeah, and there's one more.
Yeah,
there is.
One more thing.
There's one more little goodie. So there's a new thing, I guess it's about a year old now, called value task. And again, highly recommend learning more, digging into value task. But what is it? Long story short, it's basically if you have an async task method that doesn't always call await. So for example here, we are storing this latest release using the Xamarin Essentials preferences library. So we are essentially storing this to disk once we find it. And so what we really should be doing before we call an API, before we make our users wait for an internet activity to return a result, we could just check to see if latest releases, and I'm going to say is not null because we're using C#9 now. And so if latest releases is not null, then I don't have to run any of this. I can just say return. And the benefit here is, so the hot path of this code is going to be right here, because we're going to run this code once, where we actually await a method. So we have the await keyword down here. This is where we're going to make the web API. This will run once, but once we run it the first time, we don't need to run it the second time, the third time, the fourth time. We're just going to return. And so if you have a method that is an async task method, where what I call the hot path, the path that the code follows 80, 90, 95% of the time, does not use await, then we can take advantage of value task. So great. So glad that value task came around. I love that the .NET team added that in, because we get all these performance benefits for free. But now you'll notice Async Command's complaining because it's saying, hey, wait a minute. Execute get latest release returns a value task, and I explicitly need a task. Well, no worries, Gerald. If you're a fan of value task like me, then we can just say async value command. And, well, I guess we have to update this one too. Boom. No more red squiggles. And we can still have commands that use value task just like they use task.
Everything, unicorns, cupcakes, it's amazing. This stuff is fantastic. You mentioned it's open source. I can imagine that it's somewhere available on the link, which is going to appear again down below. So that is really great. Please go there and check out those await async best practices. I probably mix up all the words there, but that is really awesome stuff. Thank you so much, Brandon, for coming on and telling us all about this great new stuff that you've added. And I think there was a couple of other community members that were really in there involved in the discussion. So that's really cool. And I'm looking forward to much more of your contributions.
Thanks so much, Gerald. We'll see you soon.
All right, thank you for watching. As always, you can find all the links down below in the video description. Please subscribe to our channel, like all the videos, subscribe to all the things, basically do all the things that you want to do to keep up to date with all these wonderful videos that we're putting out there for you. Thank you for joining us for another episode, and we'll see you for the next one.